Please respond. Caller advised they have not heard from their boyfriend in some time and they received some concerning messages. Unit 2365, I'll be en route. This is just another day on the job. But today was going to be different. You see, just 2 short weeks prior, I was sitting in the chief's office, signing my resignation letter. I had fallen in love. There were just 2 small hurdles to overcome. 1, I had to move halfway across the country to be with the person I fell in love with. 2, person I fell in love with was another woman. You see, this meant I had to come out to my family and tell them something I had known about myself for quite some time. Now, I'm grateful to say, after the shock factor wore off, my family was very accepting. Unfortunately, for my then girlfriend, now wife, she faced a very different scenario. Her father, upon hearing the news that she was with me, another woman, sent her a text message that would shatter her world and enrage me. That text message read, if we were back in Russia, I would chop you up and feed you to the pigs. Unit 2365, I'm on scene for the last call I'd ever take at that department. My partner and I arrived to a 3-story complex and we were immediately met by the caller who was a bit frantic, explaining they hadn't heard from their boyfriend in some time and they received some concerning messages. A neighbor stepped out who actually knew the caller, so they went ahead to sit with them while my partner and I went forward to investigate. We approached the door and we looked around, but we couldn't really see anything. We knocked loudly, but there was no answer. Based on the circumstances, we were given permission to go ahead and make entry. As I positioned myself in front of the door and I drew my service weapon, I dropped my shoulder, busting in, yelling, police, police, and I was immediately looking into a living room. My partner advanced forward. I then turned behind him once and once again as I was looking down a hallway when I heard the sound, click. Now in law enforcement, that's a good sound. It means my partner holstered his weapon. There was no longer a threat. So I went ahead and holstered my own. I was about to exit out of the apartment when I heard him say, hey, come in here. I took a few steps forward and I found myself in the doorway of the master bedroom. It was dark, but there was just enough light peeking through the blinds when I saw the body. The young man was laying in the bed. He had a bag over his head with duct tape around the neck and a tube slithered underneath the duct tape. That tube was connected to a tank on the ground. That young man was deceased by suicide. Unit 2365, real medics to my location. We have an apparent suicide. I had been a cop for about 4 years at this time, and I'm grateful to say I had never actually found someone deceased on a suicide call. But this was a crime scene, and so as I began to exit out of the apartment, I found myself back in that original room. A piece of paper caught my eye. I went over to the coffee table and I began to read what appeared to be a suicide note. See, that young man described how life in general was just stressful. Everything from work and friends and family. And then it hit me. Remember that caller, that frantic caller who was so concerned about their boyfriend? Was a man. And this young man ultimately went on to describe that he took his life because his family rejected him for being gay. Could have easily been my wife writing her own suicide letter simply for living authentically and loving me. You know, my wife and I, we faced many moments of discrimination over the years, everything from verbal arguments to awkward stares to even the need for a protective order for the safety of ourselves and our children. And it is 2021, and we've come a long way since the Stonewall riots in 1969, but we have a long way to go. My wife and I, we share 3 beautiful children together. Our youngest, my 11-year-old son, he described to me one day as I stood there proudly at the bus stop that he got into a verbal argument with another student. You see, this student told him that couldn't be me, his mother, standing there. No, that must be his father, maybe his brother, a cousin, or an uncle, or simply just any other man. All because I have short hair? Our 17-year-old son, he should never be concerned about going to high school and facing a bully just because he's proud to be a young gay teenager. No person should ever face judgment or ridicule for who they love or how they identify. So I stand here. I stand here in vulnerability, and I stand here in courage. And I implore you all to push past the judgment, let go of the hate, and simply just love one another, because someone's life depends on it. See that young man who laid in that bed with that bag over his head and the tape around his neck? His life depended on it. My own wife whose father sent her a text message and said they'd rather see her chopped up and fed to the pigs. Her life depends on it. And it could be anyone. Your own mother, father, brother, sister, friend, colleague, or even your own child whose life depends on it. You know, 2365, I'll be 10-7 for the last time. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for that deeply moving speech. It was really powerful. And as a queer woman who also has short hair and is very tall, I regularly get confused as a man. I get called short a lot, so I completely understand that one. So next, we're going to move